First thing I wanted to do today, after we had a week to get things in, I know that you still have your exams due. First of all, before I forget, we had Angie come in here last week and talk to you about the academic support or academic support center, that doing the sessions at 8 o'clock in the morning before class. How many people are interested in doing something like that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, about 12 of you. Okay, just so I know, because we weren't sure how many people were going to be interested in doing that right away at the beginning. We figured, well, as people start to take their tests and they start to see how things are panning out and how things are kind of playing out for them, we can do that. So I'll let her know we do have some people. So plan on next week at 8, just out here in that little lounge area over here. Plan on that, and then Angie will be there, and she'll go through with you. I'll let her know. I appreciate you doing that, and it's going to be beneficial to you. Yes. Yeah, I won't be here next week, but if you want to come for it, you can. Yeah, feel free. Thank you for asking that question. It's a good question. All right. And for those people who are watching online and you live close enough, and you want to be a part of a study group at 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays, you're more than welcome to come. Just let me know that you're interested so we know to look for you, and then we'll do that. Okay, so now that make sure I remember that. Next question. What questions do you have for me? Are there any areas, I know I had an opportunity to talk with you yesterday, but just in case, are there any areas of confusion yet that are still there for you in regard to completing assignments, where to find things, reading assignments? Some students and some of our online students are like, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to navigate through that, and I appreciate you helping out fellow students. Are you getting a feel for the routine of things, at least how things kind of are set up and how the homework assignment goes and how the lab assignment goes? There's still a little bit of confusion, I think more so for advanced A&P than general A&P because just the way I do it, but there's still some confusion a little bit about activities versus practicals. Lab activities you can do as many times as you want. It's preparing you for the lab practical. Let's picture you were in a lab setting where you come to lab, and then when you get to lab, I'd hand you a piece of paper and say, okay, here is essentially a quiz, or here's essentially a set of questions. I want you to answer them. You'd answer them to the best of your ability. You hand them back, and I grade them. That's your lab practical grade, okay? So that's what a lab practical is. It's kind of like your lab test. Does that make sense? Or like your laboratory exam. It's like testing you on what you learn through your lab activity, okay? So you do the lab activity, and then after completing the lab activity, you take a test on it. That's the practical, okay? So the activity you can do as many times as you want. When you're ready, take the practical, and then that's a one-time shot, all right? Just so you understand the difference between activity and practical. Like I said, it doesn't affect you so much. In advanced A&P, I have them doing like a virtual lab, and then they're telling me, I'm doing the lab practical, 3 or 4 times. I'm like, well, that's not the lab practical. That's the lab activity. So I just want to make sure I can get you through that. Okay, I want to show you something because it will be helpful for your lab activity, which will lead to some of your lab practical as we move forward. So in your lab activity for Learning Plan 4, what you're going to see is you're going to be asked some questions. I better get my whiteboard tool up here too. All right, you're going to be asked some questions, and we kind of got a question on that on the discussion board. I just saw it, and I want to make sure that I'm showing you this in case you're not aware of it. You probably aren't, unless you've really done a lot of exploring and looking around and Connect. Let me just get logged in so I can show it to you. Okay, so this is something that you'll have to access through Connect directly. So reminder, if you go to Blackboard, I'll go through the Blackboard way so you know how to get there. Let me just log in here. Okay, so when you get into your class, you go to Learning Plans over here on the left side, and then right here, the top link is a shortcut link to Connect site. Click on that, and it's going to take you right into Connect. All right? Because you've got the two classes linked, it'll take you right in here. Over here on the right side, you've got your ebook, but down here, it says Cadaver Dissection Tool. Have any of you taken a look at this thing yet? Probably not, because you haven't played around with it that much yet, but by the way, here's Learn Smart. If you ever want to, go into the reading type assignments, you can jump right to them here if you click on this Learn Smart link. But here on the Cadaver Dissection Tool, the reason I'm showing you this is because I want you to know where to find this stuff, because you're going to see some pictures for your lab activity, and you're going to be like, where the heck are these pictures coming from? And I just want you to know where to find this, so you're not pulling if you're like me, what little hair you have left out, or starting to look like me because you're pulling your hair out. Overseer Maria, would either of you mind just turning the lights down so I can just show you this on the screen here so you can get a better view of it? Try the other ones. I think you got to do both. There we go. All right. Thank you. So when you are in here, this is called Anatomy and Physiology Revealed. It's a virtual cadaver. It's actually pretty cool, pretty gross if you think that cadavers and that stuff is kind of disgusting, gross. I don't know. It's all right. But anyway, up here, just ignore this "my" right here, because you can save things from here and then dump them into this, so that when you click on "my," then you can go back and you can capture stuff. But don't really worry about that. What I want you to do is right here where it says module, you're going to select a module. Now, the question on the discussion board was in regard to like the body quadrants. It's like, oh yeah, that would be nice to know now. But anyway, you click on body orientation, for example, and then here you've got three things. You've got dissection, you've got animation, and you've got quiz. You can quiz yourself. So if I click on animation, for example, there's only one thing here under the animations here, which is homeostasis. If you click on that, it'll open up a video. I'm not going to do that now. But if you click on the dissection portion, where it says My Course Content, you could do all content, really, because My Course Content is it might be limited sometimes. But anyway, if I go to here and I click on abdominal quadrants and regions, there it is. If you click on left hypochondriac region, it's going to show it to you. If you want to hear what it sounds like, you can't hear it because I heard it because I have my headset on that takes over the speaker, but it will pronounce it for you. So if you're not sure how to pronounce something, that'll be helpful if you're covering muscles. But anyway, for what you're going to be doing, you want to click on the module, you want to click on tissues. Now, here we've got animation, epithelial tissue overview, connective tissue overview, muscle tissue overview, nervous tissue overview. You can click on those. You can watch a video on it. But what would probably be of particular interest to you to help you with your lab activity is going to be this histology link. Now you go over here and you click select topic, and use all the different types of epithelial tissues, simple, stratified, our connective tissues, loose, dense, cartilage, bone. We're going to go through all these. So you see all the list of this? See how long this list is? Does that look like a really long list? Look painfully long? You're going to know all these before you get out of here today. You'll know them. You'll be able to give me all the names of them. I swear. You will. Because you guys are awesome. You'll know it. But anyway, so in the future, once you're done, then you can click on this and you can see this picture. Now, this might be a picture that you see or something very similar to this that you see on your lab assignment. So that's what I'm saying, that you use this because you can click on this thing and then you can see here, if you click on it, it's going to show you that this is the part here, the stratified squamous epithelium. And I don't want to scare you because you're like, what the heck am I even looking at? This looks like a big blob. Okay, we'll go through this. But I'm just saying, when we're done here and as you're going through your lab activities, feel free to look through here. Now, I want to see something really cool. If you go to muscular system, this one's fun to do, the dissection. If you're just, like I said, you don't have any spare time and free time, I know that. But when we get to this, I mean, it's actually pretty wild to see this stuff, because you can go like to the thorax. You start off here with a cadaver's chest, and then what you can do is you can slide. You got the sliders here. You can slide down. You can peel off the skin, and then you can go down the next layer. These are the superficial muscles, and you can go deeper and deeper. And then if you're looking for these muscles, you can just click on the muscle. Again, you can click on the pronunciation of it. Shows you where the muscle is. Okay, and you can keep going deeper and deeper. Let's get off of the pectoralis minor. Okay, and you can keep going deeper. You go all the way down. Now, I don't know how I can get rid of this pectoralis minor. It just showed up here. I'm trying to get rid of it. But anyway, so you can play around with this. It's actually pretty neat. You can save an image if you want. You can get the directional labels if you want, left, right, superior, inferior, and so on and so forth. So don't hesitate. Like I said before, with your reading assignments and Learn Smart assignments, don't be afraid. Your computer isn't going to explode. You're not going to fail the class. You're not going to be sent to a place you don't want to be. It's not going to just click around and play around. Don't be afraid. Okay? If you click on the wrong thing and you end up like using your one chance on a lab practical because you were clicking around, you accidentally clicked on something. Say, Dr. V, I didn't mean to. I clicked it. It says I only have a 5%. Well, obviously, I know you didn't just try your best and get a 5%. Obviously, you clicked on it accidentally. Just let me know, all right? There are things we can do. But don't hesitate to play around, look around, and have some fun with the stuff and just look around, okay? Don't hesitate. That's how you get there, by exploring. Right? When you get a new computer, how do you figure out half the stuff you do on a computer or a phone? Just by playing around in it, right? And figuring it out. That's kind of how you got to do this. Would you mind turning the lights on in the back again? Thank you. All right, so I just wanted to show you that so you know where that stuff is. Okay. So today, before I do that, let's get this back up here so I have my writing tools. Okay, good. We're good. All right. Come on now. Okay, let's make sure we're working. All right, we should be good. Yes. All right. All right, so today we're going to be covering Learning Plan 4. Next time we're together, we'll be talking about Learning Plan 5. But Learning Plan 4 deals with the tissue level of organization. So, very quickly, we started off last week with an introduction to the body. Yesterday, we did Learning Plan 2 and 3. Learning Plan 2 was the chemical level of organization. Learning Plan 3 is the cellular level of organization. Now we're going to the next level of organization, which is the tissue level of organization. We're going to look at the tissues of the body. What are tissues comprised of? Cells, yes, mostly cells. There might be some other stuff. We'll talk about the other stuff, but mostly cells. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the different tissues of the body. And what we're going to see is that there are 4 main tissue types in the body. We're going to learn those 4 main tissue types, and then we're going to learn the individual tissue types that belong to each of those 4 categories or groups. It looks scary, but it's really not if you organize your studies, and you'll be able to do this. I'll work through it with you. All right, so first of all, let's talk about the different types of tissue. I don't have them written per se in the notes right at the beginning. All right, so all we do is we start off with letter A on page 1 with epithelial tissue, but let's go through the 4 different tissue types, and I want you to write these down. And even better if you, as we go on, grab a piece of paper that doesn't have much on it, or flip your notes over, or find a blank sheet of paper somewhere to write down at the top of the page the 4 different tissue types across the top. So at the top left, you're going to put the first type, then next to that, to the right of that, you're going to put the second type, and to the right of that, third type, and to the right of that, the fourth type. So you have 4 different tissues across the top of your paper, if that works for you or something similar. If not, that's fine. But our 4 main tissue types are as follows. We have epithelial tissue. If you don't know how to spell epithelial, it's in your notes, page 1, letter A. EPI, epithelial, THELIAL. I loved spelling when I was a kid in elementary school. Anybody else love spelling? One? That's it? Oh, come on. I was the spelling bee champion. 6th grade, got ripped off in 7th grade. I had the word, they didn't hear it correctly, and I was so mad. I had it. I had two years in a row in the bag, and I got shafted. I got the shaft. All right. So epithelial is number 1. Number 2, connective tissue. Connective. 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 I love spelling so much I tried to figure out how to spell the letters. How about that? How do you spell A? A-Y. How about that? How do you spell B? B-E-E. C, C-E-E. Oh, I tell you, there's something wrong with me. All right. 3rd tissue type, muscle tissue. Hope you know how to spell muscle. If you don't, it's M-U-S-C-L-E. And then the 4th type is nervous, N-E-R-V-O-U-S. So those are the 4 main tissue types, epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous. And we're going to go through each of those. Now, here's the thing. Not only are you going to learn the tissues by name, you're going to learn what they look like, you're going to learn the qualities and characteristics of them, you're going to learn where they're located, but don't make this harder on yourself than it needs to be. So once you understand what these tissues are made up of, allow your knowledge of what they're made up of to help you understand what those tissues can do and then where they might be located in the body because of what they do. And I'll tell you more about that as we move along. But the first one we're going to start with here, well, here they are, right here. Table 5.1 gives you an overview of all the tissues, and it even gives you all the names. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. There's about 22 types. You don't think you're going to learn this? This is like, you get in the bag. This is going to be in the bag. You'll know it. I swear, you will. And you'll be like, yes, got it. It's not that bad if you learn it with a system in mind. If you just look at a list and say you're going to memorize a list of 20 things, then 22 things, then it's like, oh, it's crazy. Yeah, what's up? How long did it take me to learn it? It doesn't take long. How long did it take me? I don't know, the same amount of time it will take you. Like within 3 hours you'll know it. That's how long it took me, within 3 hours. I used to have fun with kindergartners too, because I teach them how to learn a list of like 10 things at one time. So it's all about memory. It's all about memory, memorization. All right, you'll learn this. Have faith, Adam. Have faith. You'll get it. All right. So first of all, when we look at epithelial tissues, we have to remember what an epithelial tissue does. An epithelial tissue is like a covering or a lining. It's a covering or a lining. So it's going to cover something. It's going to line the inside of something. Okay? It's a covering or a lining. Epithelial tissue, covering or lining. And all epithelial tissues have the same characteristics and qualities if you look at them. So ignore this thing right here, this connective tissue. Oh, see, I'm trying to write on the wrong one again here. Ignore this for now. Okay? We don't want to look at this. Who cares about that? All right? We're not concerned with that. What we're concerned about is this here. If you look at this picture, you're going to see that you have cells. Here's a cell. 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 How much junk is there between these cells? How much do you see between the cells? What do you see in between these cells? Something or nothing, really? Not much. So what you're going to see with epithelial tissues is that the cells are all crammed really close together. You just see a bunch of cells. That's all you see. And you're going to see that we have other tissue types that are not going to have the same quality. You're going to be looking at a cell, and then there's a huge space, and then there's another cell, and then a space, and another cell. Here, all of the cells are crammed close together. Also, look, what's on top of these cells? What do you see on top of these cells? What's sitting on top of the cell? Nothing. Nothing. That's because they have what we call an apical or a free surface. So on one aspect of the cell, you have an apical or free surface, and then on the bottom aspect, you've got this basement membrane that anchors it down, so you have a basal surface. So you have an apical surface and you have a basal surface. This is going to be the case for all epithelial tissues. All epithelial tissues are just cells crammed together with an apical surface and a basal surface. There you go. So when you're looking at these slides and you're looking at these pictures, that's what you're going to look for. Is there an apical surface? Is there a basal surface? Do I see cells? Do I see anything else besides cells? And so if yes, you see an apical surface, yes, you see a basal surface, yes, you see a bunch of cells, and no, you don't see anything else, then you know it's an epithelial tissue. Okay. So before we get into like the types of epithelial tissues, I want to go through the functions of epithelial tissue, which is at the bottom of page 1 here. Epithelial tissues, they serve to protect external and internal surfaces from dehydration, abrasion, and destruction by physical, chemical, or biological agents. So epithelial tissues can be protectors. That doesn't mean they all are, but it means they can protect. Epithelial tissues have selective permeability, so they can allow passage of some substances and disallow passage of others. They can do this. And some epithelial cells are capable of secreting things. Okay, we'll talk about that. Epithelial tissue can contain extensive sensory receptors, allowing it to monitor the outside environment, because we have epithelial tissues in the skin, for example. And some organs contain a specialized epithelium called neuroepithelium that houses specific cells responsible for senses of sight, taste, smell, hearing, and equilibrium. Okay? So, just an overview of the functions of epithelial tissue, but these are general. When we look at the specific tissues, then we can talk about the functions a little bit more. Now, whenever we talk about epithelial tissues, you're going to learn like 8 epithelial tissues like this. Okay, you're going to learn it really fast, because what you're going to do is you're going to look at the shape of the cell, and then you're going to look at how many layers of the cells there are. Okay, so here's the deal. If you get a single layer of cells, one single layer of cells, you call it a simple epithelial tissue. Okay, what do you call it? Simple. There you go. Now, there's 3 different types of cell shapes. Okay? So if there's a single layer, it's simple. If it's more than one layer, it's called stratified. So if it's more than one layer, it's called what? Stratified. Okay, so you're going to have 3 cell types that are simple. 3 tissue types that are simple, 3 tissue types that are stratified. And then we have 2 outliers, which we'll get to. But first of all, let's look at these. Okay? So on the left side, you can see we have a single layer of cells. We call that simple epithelium. We have more. Can you see how there's more than one layer of cells here? Yes, more than one layer. How much stuff is between these cells? Not much at all, right? They're just crammed together. Okay? Is there an apical surface to this? Yes. Is there a basal surface? Yes. Okay, so it's what kind of tissue then? Epithelial tissue. How many layers do you see? 1 or more than 1? More than one, so we call it stratified. Okay, so you've got half of it done. So now you have to just look at the shape of the cell. If it's a flat cell, looking like the ceiling tiles, it's broad and flat and thin, we call that a squamous cell. So we can have a simple squamous epithelial tissue. Or we can have a cuboidal cell. They're trying to show you a three-dimensional structure. I don't know, it looks like a flat piece of whatever to me. But anyway, imagine a little cube. Okay? So we have cells that are cuboidal in shape. So they're called cuboidal. So we can have simple cuboidal epithelial tissue. Or we can have cells that are columnar, like the ones that you saw before in this picture here. See how they're columnar? See how they're tall? They're like columns? It's called columnar. So what kind of epithelial tissue is this? How many layers? One. So it's simple columnar epithelial tissue. That was hard. Okay. So we have either simple squamous epithelial tissue, simple cuboidal epithelial tissue, or simple columnar epithelial tissue. Or guess what? We can have stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, or stratified columnar. That was tough. Can you handle that? If you can handle that, you can handle the rest. That's it. Okay, so there's 6 right there. Was that hard? Good, only 20 more to go, right? No, how many? How many more? 16? I know. All right. So they can either be simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, or they can be stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, stratified columnar. Easy, right? Okay. But now we got to look at these individual tissues and see what they do. So if you go down to, if you're following along the notes, page 2, number 14, it says, a simple squamous epithelium is a thin, single layer of flattened cells that can allow rapid movement of molecules across surface by diffusion, osmosis, or filtration. Now this table does a great job of telling you everything about it, but it's really small that you can't see it from where you are. But table 5.2 takes you through all the different epithelial tissue types. So first of all, we've got a view from above. Okay, so let's picture that I'm looking at tiles on the floor from below, or from above, looking at tiles on the floor from above. You're going to see these cells that are irregular in shape. Well, I don't know about that. Hold on a second. This orientation is a little off here. No. Sorry. Misspoke. Here, hold on. Gotta clear this off. Take this away. Get away. All right. Nope. Opposite. So what they're looking at here, it's hard to see, but you're actually looking at the sides of these cells. So basement membrane. This is a horrible picture for showing simple squamous epithelial tissue. So what they're trying to show you here is that you have the basement membrane down here, and then you've got the simple squamous tissue that's kind of sitting on top of that. But you can't really differentiate that here with this picture. So that's just a horrible picture. Horrible picture. Look at this picture. There's a better representation of what you're trying to see here. So what you're trying to see here is that you have a basement membrane here. You've got the simple squamous cells here in one flat layer. Now, if you could read this from where you are, it says that the function here is rapid diffusion, filtration, and secretion. So think about the cell. The cell is thin. Why is it thin? Looking at the function, why is it thin? Yeah, it left stuff through it. That's why, okay? So if you saw that this tissue was present where things are allowed to diffuse or pass through, where do you think you would see some of these cells? Lungs, because you have exchange of gases. Yes, where else? Really, really, really small blood vessels that allow for gases and wastes and things to pass through. What are they called? Starts with a C. Capillaries. Yeah, so you'll see things like that. So you'll see them in places like that where you have diffusion, where you have things passing through. Simple squamous epithelial tissue is designed to allow things to pass through. That's its role. Moving down here to the simple cuboidal. Whenever you see the cube-shaped cells, I always think of the cube-shaped cells as kind of like, they're kind of juicy. They squirt stuff. Most of the time when you see when you see a cuboidal cell, most of the time it's going to be secreting something. It's probably going to be part of a gland. So think of the cuboidal cells as these juicy cells that squirt out stuff. All right, they're cube-shaped. This one's easier to see. You can see the cube-shaped cells here. Do you see them? And you can tell because they've got the nucleus with them. So you see this big nucleus here? Big nucleus. How many rows of nuclei do you see? Here. How many rows of nuclei do you see? About one. So you're going to guess that this is going to be simple cuboidal epithelial tissue. They do some absorption, but for the most part, the cuboidal cells are secretors. They secrete things. They're juicy, remember, they secrete things. So where would you find these? I told you before, but where would you find these? What kind of things secrete things? What kind of structures? Yeah, glands, they secrete things. So you're going to see them in like the thyroid gland or the ovary, the kidneys, secretory regions, ducts of glands. So wherever you see glands, for the most part, you're going to see cuboidal epithelium. If it has one layer, then it's what? What cuboidal? Simple. Yeah, you got it. All right. Then we have the columnar epithelial tissue. So what you're looking for here is you're looking for a single row of column-like cells. From where you are, it might be hard to see this picture, but if you're up close to this picture, you can see that they circled one of these cells. It looks column-shaped. You can see it. Here's the thing. You want to look at the nuclei. How many rows of nuclei are there? How many rows of nuclei do you see here? One. Here's the apical surface. See, there's nothing up here. Nothing up here. So this is the apical surface. This is the basal surface down here. So we have one row of column-shaped cells. Now, for the most part, the column-shaped cells are going to be absorbers. They can secrete things, but they're going to secrete things that aid the process of whatever's happening around it. So let me explain. So you might see columnar cells in the walls of the small intestine. Well, the small intestine are designed primarily to absorb the nutrients from the food that you eat. However, the cells of the small intestine also will secrete what do they call it? Brush border enzymes, they call it. So they'll secrete enzymes or other digestive secretions to help digest the food. Or you'll even see sometimes these white things called goblet cells. And here's a picture for you. The goblet cells secrete mucus. Here's a goblet of mucus for you. Delicious, right? So usually when you see a columnar cell, it's going to be involved mostly with absorption, but it does do some secretion as well. And I told you where you will find, for the most part, your simple columnar epithelial tissue. Where would that be? Where would you find it? In the intestinal tract, the digestive tract. You'll find it there. Yep. Okay. So this is where you have to apply. We were talking about this last week a little bit. This is where you have to start to apply your critical thinking skills. You have to think, once you know the tissue type and you know the characteristics and qualities, now you have to start to apply. Where do I think this tissue would be located in the body based on what it does or what its characteristics are? Now we have two different types of simple columnar epithelium here. that they're showing you. One is here, letter C, and one's D. One is non-ciliated, one's ciliated. When it's non-ciliated, it means it doesn't have the cilia. What do cilia do? We talked about this yesterday. What do cilia do? Produces what? Go ahead. What's that? Yes, movements. So you're moving stuff. Now, we have peristalsis in the small intestine and the digestive tract. So we don't need anything to move the food along. But we don't have peristalsis in our respiratory tract. But we want to keep the environmental debris out. We want to keep the dust and the pollutants and everything out of a respiratory tract. So where are you going to see ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue? Respiratory system, respiratory tract. Yeah, that's primarily where we're going to find it. You also find it in the uterine tubes, because remember I was talking about that yesterday. We have the cilia involved in the uterine or the fallopian tubes to move the egg along, the unfertilized egg, right? So you will see simple columnar epithelium with cilia on it in some locations as well, all right? Now, I don't want to get to the next one yet, so just hold on for a second. I want to go into the stratified epithelium, and then we'll come back to the outliers. Okay. So when we look at the stratified cuboidal and the stratified columnar epithelial tissues, for the most part, the functions remain the same. So for cuboidal, what's the primary function of cuboidal tissue cells? Secretion. Yes, they're juicy. They squirt stuff out, right? And you'll find them about in the same places, just different kinds of glands, but you'll find them in the ducts of glands for the most part. Stratified columnar epithelial tissue, again, do a little bit of secretion, but it's not going to be so much for absorption now. It's going to be more for protection. You're going to find these in the salivary glands and the urethra, maybe some places that are responsible for secreting things like that, but you also, like in the male urethra, you want a little bit of protection as well. You don't find these epithelial, the stratified columnar, in many places. It's not as common as the simple columnar epithelial tissue. What we do see here is that when we look at the stratified squamous epithelial tissue, now we have more than one layer of these flat cells, and they take on a different function. Now, we have two different types. We have keratinized stratified squamous epithelial tissue and non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelial tissue. I don't really care if you differentiate between keratinized or not at this point, because we haven't really talked about Learning Plan 5, which is the skin, where we talk about keratinized cells. So anyway, the only difference between keratinized stratified squamous epithelial tissue and non-keratinized is that the keratinized cells have died off. And you'll find them at the surface of the skin. So if I take my fingernails and I scrape the surface of my skin, am I going to start bleeding if I just do this? No. Why? What did I do to the surface of my skin? I scraped a thin layer, right. So that's where you see the keratinized stratified squamous epithelial tissue, right at the surface of the skin. You have multiple layers of dead cells that just slough off. So what's the function of keratinized stratified squamous epithelial tissue? What's the function? Protection, yes. From abrasion, yes. Okay. Now we have non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelial tissue. So let's say I'm eating potato chips and I swallow a potato chip that I didn't really chew all that well, and it starts scratching as it goes down. Ever have that experience? Some scratches to throw all the way down? Okay. Well, fortunately, your throat, your esophagus is lined with non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelial tissue. It's still alive, but why don't you suffer major damage when that happens? Because you have multiple layers of flat cells. So what's the function of non-keratinized squamous epithelial tissue? Protection, same thing. Okay? But you're going to see it more in internal structures. So you can see the location as the lining of the oral cavity or the pharynx, which is your throat, esophagus, the lining of the vagina and anus. So areas that might be susceptible to friction, they're going to have this non-keratinized squamous, stratified squamous epithelial tissue. Okay, so let's review. What are the 6 types of epithelial tissues we know? We have simple what? Simple squamous, simple cuboidal, and simple columnar. Then we have stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, and stratified columnar. There you go. You got it. See? Now, we have 2 outliers that don't really fit with any of these. And one of them is on the screen here. It's on the bottom. It's called transitional epithelial tissue. Transitional epithelial tissue. Transitional epithelial tissue does just that. It goes through a transition. So when it has the ability to stretch, basically. So you're going to see transitional epithelial tissue like in the urinary bladder, for example. So when your urinary bladder isn't filled with much urine, it's relaxed, and so the tissue cells are going to look more cuboidal. But guess what happens as your urinary bladder starts to expand because it's accommodating more and more fluid inside of it? It's going to start to stretch. So what are those cells going to do? They're going to flatten out. So when the bladder is distended or stretched, now they look more like a squamous epithelial tissue. So that's what they're trying to show you here at the bottom of this picture. Showing you how they're almost cuboidal at the top, and then on the bottom, when it's distended or stretched, how it flattens out. So that's transitional. We have another type of epithelial tissue, which we saw before, and it's at the bottom of this picture here, and it's called pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Pseudostratified columnar. What does the prefix pseudo mean? P-S-E-U-D-O. What does that mean? False. False, yeah. So it's a falsely stratified columnar epithelial tissue. Falsely stratified. The reason why they call it pseudo-stratified columnar epithelial tissue is because it looks like multiple layers of columnar cells. But in reality, all the cells are anchored to the basement membrane. Like, okay, well, that's tough. It's tough to figure that out. Well, let's kind of look at it here. Let me go and grab let's see if I can get onto the Anatomy and Physiology Revealed. Now, here's one thing I want to show you. Do you notice how next to all these words here, simple squamous epithelium, it says APR? That stands for Anatomy Physiology Revealed. That's that software I was showing you before. So let's see if I still got it up here. I don't think I do. Let me just go in here. Tissues. Let's do pseudostratified columnar epithelium. All right. This will be a little bit better because you can see a bigger picture of it rather than that shrunken picture that we were looking at before. Okay. Got my red pen. I don't know if it's going to show up. It should show up on my slideshow, but we'll see. All right. So anyway, this is pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue. Is it ciliated or non-ciliated? What do you think? Look at the top of it. Looks ciliated to me. I see looks like a brush up here, okay? So if it's ciliated, where do I think I'm going to see this? Same place you'd see ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue. Where was that? Not the digestive, respiratory, right? The digestive moves by itself. It's the respiratory system. Okay, so what you want to look for, first of all, when you're looking at this, what are the questions you're going to ask? Question number one. What are you going to ask when you're looking at this picture? What's that? Okay, I'm looking at shape. Okay, the shape of what? The cells. Okay, so what am I going to ask about the cells? Is there what between them? Yeah, is there space between them, or are they pretty much crammed close together? What do you think? No space. They're kind of crammed together, okay? What else am I going to ask? Is there a what surface? Is there an apical surface? Do I see one? Yeah, in this picture I do. Is there a basal surface? Yes, I see a basal surface, okay? So this is the basal surface here, right? Here's the apical surface right on the top here, okay? Now you're asking about the shape. Yeah, okay, well, they're kind of long. But now what are we looking at? Remember, when you look at simple cuboidal epithelial tissue, let me get it back onto my mouse here. If I go to simple cuboidal epithelial, columnar I meant. Okay, it's a different view here. So you gotta be creative here. Do I see an apical surface? Yes. Okay, let's just pick one. Let's say I'll do blue. So let's say this is the apical surface. Here's clear daylight, right? So down here is the basal surface. Does everyone see that? So here's my column-shaped cell. So you gotta sometimes turn your neck a little bit and see it. But do you see how the nuclei are pretty much all at the same level? Give or take, okay? So when we look at this other picture here, going back to the pseudostratified, look at the nuclei in this picture. See how they're all over the place? It looks like there's more than one layer. That's what tricks you. That's why it looks like it's stratified columnar epithelial tissue, because there are multiple layers. Here's the deal. Most of the time, if you see more than one layer of nuclei, and it looks like it's columnar, and you're saying, okay, is this pseudostratified or is it stratified? Number one, stratified columnar epithelial tissue rarely has cilia, number one. So if it's ciliated, you're guessing it's probably going to be pseudostratified. Number two, look at the goblet cells. See those white things there? Stratified columnar, I keep saying cuboidal, I'm sorry. Stratified columnar epithelial tissue rarely has goblet cells, okay? So if you see cilia and goblet cells on a tissue that looks like it might be stratified columnar, and you're trying to decide, is it stratified columnar or is it pseudostratified columnar? If it has the cilia and the goblet cells, chances are it's going to be pseudostratified, all right? It's a tricky one, but that's one of the outliers. Okay, and then the other one was the transitional. All right? So what are the 8 types of epithelial tissues, cells that we have, or epithelial tissue? We have simple, squamous, simple, cuboidal, simple, columnar. Then we have stratified, squamous. We have stratified, cuboidal. We have stratified, columnar. And then we have the 2 outliers, pseudostratified and transitional. You did 8. That wasn't hard, right? You feel okay about that? I'm seeing some yeses. Is anybody completely lost? No? Nobody wants to admit it anyway. All right. We'll keep going on. All right. So that takes us through the epithelial tissues. Now we get into, I want to go through glands a little bit, because whenever we talk about the epithelial tissues, we want to talk about glands. And we're talking about glands on page 4 of your notes. Now, glands can either be one cell or it can be multiple cells. And they're probably going to be made up of what type of epithelial tissue? Cuboidal. Yep, you got it. Nice. Yes, for the most part, cuboidal. So we have a secretory portion here that you see. This is made up of cuboidal cells. This is what's, bless you, it's going to secrete the secretion, and the secretion is going to end up in here, and then it will be secreted through a duct if it's an exocrine gland, okay? So we have exocrine glands and we have endocrine glands. Exocrine glands, they will create the secretion and then secrete it into a tube or a duct, whereas endocrine glands create the secretion and just release it into the blood. All right, so two different types of glands. So we have what are called simple glands. The duct is unbranched. So it's a single duct. Do you see that? Single duct, single duct, single duct, single duct, single duct. And they're just given names. Now, I'm not going to, you don't have to lose sleep over this, okay? So we have a tubular, we have a branched tubular, we have a coiled tubular, we have acinar, which means it's like a ball, and we have branched acinar, okay? There you go. I've introduced you to them. I'm not asking you to lose sleep over this, okay? This is not a major point here. I want you to understand what glands are and the different types, understand it, but it's not going to be, this isn't a huge learning point here. All right, and then we have the compound ducts because we have 1, 2, 3 ducts here. We have 3 here. See how there's more than one duct before you get to the main one here. So that's all it is. It's just a branched duct. And then they're given their name based on the shape. So tubular, it's like a test tube. Acinar looks like a ball. Okay, tubular acinar is a little bit in between. All right? So that's it. So just remember, glands are associated with cuboidal cells. Cuboidal cells. Different types of glands. Again, minor learning point here. But we have different types of glands. We have merocrine glands. We have apocrine glands, and we have holocrine glands. And I have a comparison of the different types. Should be in your notes here. The merocrine glands is, if you go to page 4, letter D, number 11, merocrine glands, like salivary glands, package their secretions into vesicles and release secretions by exocytosis. All right? So that's how a lot of glands in your body work. That you have the actual cell creating the secretion, and then it just releases directly from the cell the secretion. Apocrine glands, you can see, are a little bit different. That you get an actual piece of the cell that will end up being the secretion. This is what you see in the mammary glands for milk, for example. And then here we have the holocrine gland, where the cell goes through its normal life process, and as the cell dies and begins to fragment, that fragmentation becomes the secretion. And so you see that in the sebaceous glands. All right, so these are the 3 different types of glands you see in your body. Again, minor learning point. I just want to introduce you to it so you've seen it. All right, so you know. Okay, we're going to take a break. Because when we come back, I want to go through the connective tissues with you because there's quite a few of them, and I don't want to start on them and then break. But what I want you to do is I just want you to turn to the person next to you or find a partner, and I just want you to take turns going through. You name one epithelial tissue type, and then they name another until you get through all 8, okay? After you're done with that, you can go ahead and take a break, take 10, all right?